Then I'd better get started. Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for your participation in this beautiful weather. Today, I will talk about Architect Sinan, the famous Ottoman architect, and it's a really great pleasure for me to talk about him today at KRC here. Because like many other Ottoman architectural historians, it was his buildings that triggered my interest and pulled me into this field. I have a very clear memory of one of my trips from Ankara to Istanbul. Then I was living in Ankara. And I visited two of his major complexes in Istanbul. Then I really made up my mind and I decided to move into the field of architectural history from electronics engineering. Well, any lecture or any presentation about Architect Sinan might be slightly romantic because of the admiration or appreciation of his works. But I now skip this romantic introduction and introduce you the contents of today's lecture rapidly. First of all, I will talk about Sinan's legacy. Then I will treat Sinan as a trademark because this trademark had become really popular in the 16th century, and it was still popular in the later centuries of the Ottoman history, and it is still popular as a trademark. Then I will have a brief look at the patrons of Architect Sinan. Then finally I will focus on his life and ask the question, who is Sinan? Who was he really? In the second part of my presentation, I will concentrate on his works. And basically, I will start with his innovations in architecture in connection with his art. Then I will pay special attention to water structures or engineering works that he accomplished, including the aqueducts and bridges. Then I will pay attention to his city planning because he was not only a builder or an architect, he was as well a city planner. And finally, I will give some examples of his less popular works because he is well known with some of his major works, but his less popular works also worth some attention. Okay. This is the map of Sinan's building, and this is the map of, in fact, his surviving buildings, because most of his buildings, more than the half of them, unfortunately have disappeared in the course of the time. And we see the wide distribution, but which is, of course, concentrated on and in and around Istanbul. Sinan was the chief royal architect of Ottoman Empire between 1538 and 1588 for 50 years. He really lived a long, productive life. Maybe he was the most powerful and luckiest architect of all ages. He theoretically oversaw the construction of all public works within the Ottoman Empire, though his personal involvement in projects was typically limited to those in Anatolia, especially those in Istanbul. He was not only responsible for all the building activities and city planning of the capital, but also for training his successors and sending them to several provinces around the empire. In fact, it's impossible for him to build more than 400 buildings in 50 years, but he was training and educating a group of architects and sending them to, for instance, Jerusalem, to Crimea, to Bosnia, even to Mecca and other places. However, he took credit and the responsibility of their work too. 3/4 of his works were located in and around Istanbul, the capital. Therefore, architectural historians usually use titles like Sinan's Istanbul or Sinan's construction of the urban panorama. As I said, he built more than 400 buildings, but Sinan's power was not due to due to quantity of his works. The quality of them was at such a level that one may call them sculptures within the city, due to their artistic perfection. As a result, according to the official list of his works, Sinan is said to have constructed or supervised 476 buildings, and only 196 of them still survives. You can see the list, but this list, even this list can be extended by some architectural historians. Because some works were also attributed to him, although they are not listed in his autobiographies. The corpus of Sinan's buildings is truly astonishing, but he was not only an architect or engineer. He was responsible for every detail of city administration, including spheres, the fire regulations, the repair of all public monuments, as well as drawing the plans and supervising all public buildings in and around the empire. So he was also a manager, an organizer, a tutor, a restorator, an urban planner, and many more. When we look at this list, we see that the majority of the buildings that he built was especially the mosques, because as we talked last week, mosques were the major Islamic monuments, and the patrons were hoping to leave behind them a religious building. But he as well built many palaces, but only 2 of them truly survives. Most of them has disappeared, unfortunately. And I didn't include many shops, many houses that he also built. If we include them, that will be an immense number, I guess. For whom did he build? Let's look at Sinan's patrons. Obviously, the royal family was his major patrons. First of all, it was Süleyman the Magnificent, who reigned until 1566, almost halfway through Sinan's career. And his beloved wife, Hürrem Sultan, and their daughter, Mihrimah Sultan, were 3 major patrons of Sinan. But also other members of the royal family, including the sons of this couple, Mehmet, Cihangir, and Selim, and Selim's wife, Nurbanu Sultan, and Selim and Nurbanu's son and future Sultan Murat III, and their children, Ismail Sultan, Shah Sultan. So at least 3 generations of the royal family have been built architectural pieces by Sinan. The buildings of him, especially the Sultanate mosques, were in fact representations of the power and the hegemony of those people, and the empire was in its most powerful and economically most developed phase. So the success of Sinan is not due to only his talents. In fact, also the immense opportunities that he had. Once again, he had very rich patrons who desired to have sculpture-like buildings, while booty were pouring into Ottoman cities from the cities that were conquered. Not only sultans, but many other notables were commissioning him their buildings, including grand viziers, grand admirals, and also provincial governors, administrators, officers, agas. The buildings that he built for different ranks of Ottoman dignitaries were varying in size in accordance with their status. These codes of decorum had become an unwritten rule in the 16th century Ottoman architecture, and it is very well explained in Gülru Necipoğlu's famous book, The Age of Sinan. These codes of decorum were especially applied to the mosques that he built. For instance, those grand viziers and grand admirals or provincial governors could only have mosques with only one, a single minaret, while the royal family had the chance to have at least two or more minarets accompanying their mosque. And the diameter of the dome or the shape of the building also reflects their ranks. Let's come to another title, Sinan as a trademark. Well, a study of the life of Sinan reveals the story of a true creator, never satisfied with his achievements, constantly in search of new ideas and restlessly trying out innovative features. Although he remained the chief royal architect of the empire in his last years, architects he has trained, such as Davut Ağa, Dalgıç Ahmet Ağa, or Sedefkar Mehmet Ağa, pursued the works of him. Some of their designs were probably stamped by him and commonly known as Sinan's buildings. So we see an architect who takes credit for his successors too. So this reminds me of a trademark, because the name of Sinan stamped on the plans or stamped on the buildings was very powerful, and so many dignitaries of the time preferred this rather than the name of Davut Ağa or Dalgıç Ahmet Ağa or others. But if we also remember the patrons or the distance of the buildings from each other, for instance, one is built in Diyarbakir while the other one is built in today's Bulgaria, it's for sure it was not Sinan who really constructed buildings. Maybe he loosely sent the plans, but all of them were known as Sinan's buildings. So we should keep in mind that his inclusion in those projects was limited, but he definitely took credit of them. Even today, one can find many buildings in distant parts of Turkey which are proudly attributed to Sinan, although they were built in a much later date, or maybe in an earlier date, in an earlier time. Therefore, he really had become a trademark. But this trademark was not only to his talents, once again to the economic wealth, political milieu, military success of the time, and number of dignitaries commissioning works all together created this trademark. Let's talk about those two pieces on the screen. The one on the left is Sinan's signature, and it is the only surviving signature on a building that can be attributed to Sinan. And he calls himself Yusuf rather than Sinan, because Yusuf and Sinan are two names that used together. And on the right hand side we see the seal and the stamp of him and signature of him, which reads El Fakir Sinan Ser Mimaran Hassa, meaning the Chief Royal Architect. And in his seal he uses the words El Fakir, El Hakir, which makes him humble and very modest in fact, but of course he was not that modest. And he also uses the title Ser Mimaran Hassa, again, Chief Royal Architect. But the one on the left, the signature, is truly unique, and you can only find it on just one building. Maybe one or two were present in some of the buildings that were disappeared, but this is a singularity. Now we see another unique visual, because this is the only visual depiction of Sinan as he is overseeing the construction of Süleyman the Magnificent's tomb, and this is the funeral of Süleyman the Magnificent. On one side he is overseeing his assistants, his workers, while they dig or put the foundation of his tomb behind Süleymaniye Mosque. And it is the work of Nakkaş Osman in Tarihi Sultan Süleyman, or the history of Sultan Süleyman. And we don't have any other visual depictions of Sinan, although he was very, very, very famous at his time, apart from this. And we are not 100% sure that this guy was Sinan, but as he is holding a measuring tool, a measuring stick, he is most probably Sinan. But who is Sinan really? Let me talk briefly about his life. He was born in late 15th century, in 1490s, but we don't know the exact date or year, although some people argue that he was born in 1488, and so this makes him a man who lived 100 years, exactly 100 years, but we don't know his birth year. He was born in Ağırnas. It was a village in Kayseri, and it's in the middle of Anatolia, and it is a village famous for its stonemasons. It is even today is famous for its stonemasons, and he was probably trained as a stonemason while growing up. But then he was conscripted as a devşirme in early 16th century during the reign of Selim I. And after being trained for several years at a Turkish household where he learned Turkish traditions and converted to Islam, obviously, he came to the Acemi Ocağı, or the company of the new recruits of the Janissary army, and he had a training there in carpentry this time. And let's listen to his own story from his own words, which is taken from Tezkiretül Ebniye, or Records of Buildings. Then this humble and sinful servant of the god, Chief Architect Sinan, son of Abdülmennan, at the time of the deceased Sultan Süleyman, became a Janissary and took part in the Rhodes and Belgrade campaigns, participated in the Mohacs campaign as light dragoon, and was promoted to infantry captain, and afterwards as chief catapult officer. He had the honor of marching against the evil Germans and later to the land of Baghdad. On his return, he was made an officer in the private guards. He campaigned again under the monarchy of the world to Corfu and Apulia and Moldavia, where many conquests and victories were achieved. At that time, this humble person was conferred the position of the chief architect of the Sultan's court with the help of the supreme god. This is his really own verse, because I will soon talk about his autobiographies. But now I would like to draw your attention to first to the campaigns that he participated. He went to the east, he went to the west, he even been to Italia or somewhere near to Italia, Apulia. He's been to the Balkans, he's been to the many cities in Anatolia, and he was responsible for building activities in the army as well. So this means he most probably inspected or investigated some of the historic buildings on his way. So this would have probably created an visual dictionary of buildings in his mind, which he will make use of in his future designs. And I also would like to draw your attention to two of the campaigns that he participated. The first one is the one to the campaign to Baghdad. It's also known as the Rakhine campaign. And in this campaign, he was asked to build 3 ships to cross the Lake Van, the Van Lake in the eastern part of today's Turkey. And he did it, of course, and he even was the captain of one of those ships. And then in another campaign, in the campaign to Moldova, it took place 1537, 1538, just before he was appointed as the chief royal architect. He built a bridge on Prut River, and it turned out to be a very successful bridge, a wooden bridge, and it was demolished after the army has crossed the river by themselves in order not to let the others to use it. And it was a great success, which paved the way of his appointment as the chief royal architect, because at that year in 1538 the previous architect Acem Alisi has passed away, and he was appointed to that rank. So in this sense, maybe we can also regard Sinan as a Leonardo or a Michelangelo of his time, as a inventor, creator, because he was not only building, but he was also building ships and building wooden bridges, and which would remind us the works of those 2 famous Renaissance artists. As I mentioned, there are 5 16th century texts which give us a very, very valuable information about both the life of Sinan and the works of Sinan, because those treatises or those texts are dictated by Sinan himself to his poet-painter friend Mustafa Sai Çelebi. And as I quoted a part from one of them, from Tezkiretül Ebniye, he first tells the story of his life and the ranks that he occupied before being the chief royal architect. Then he also tells some interesting stories of the construction of some of the buildings, like Süleymaniye, how he was constructed, but how some people were gossiping about his success, and how he then given the chance to open the mosque of the door in the inauguration ceremony, and how he built the aqueducts, famous aqueducts that brought water from Belgrade forest to Istanbul. And we learn many interesting details from those. For instance, we learn some of the palaces, the details of some of the palaces that he built, and now have disappeared from those texts. In the second part of those texts, we see a list grouped in the types of the buildings, starting from the mosques and masjids and ending with bathhouses, and including also the hospitals, the caravansarais, and many others. So we have a very important archival tool in our hands. And you can find, all of them are translated, and you can find them in your reading list in the bibliography that I supplied last week. After talking about Sinan's life, we should also pay some attention to his life after his tenure. And I especially want to show this famous miniature because it shows the corps of royal architects carrying the model of Süleymaniye Mosque while Sinan was still alive, and during a circumcision ceremony of the Sultan Murat III's son, Mehmet. This is the Sultan and this is his son. And it's a very big, a huge model, and it's very interesting that they were especially carrying this mosque's model. In fact, he was, of course, very famous at his age. In the next century, in the 17th century, he was had already become a hero, and he was admired by the contemporary writers like Katip Çelebi or Evliya Çelebi, and he eventually became a legend by 19th century when Ottoman architecture was highly influenced by the Western styles, and his works were tried to be revived in the 19th century, and his works also took a significant part in 1873 monograph of Ottoman architecture, Usul-i Mimari Osmani, or the Fundamentals of Ottoman Architecture. The writers of this monograph has spared a very fundamental part to Sinan's work. So in the 19th century, Sinan was still a very admired artist. But in the 20th century, he even became one of the objects of the nation building of the Turkish Republic, because the Turkish Republic, the young Turkish Republic, was in need of a national hero, and Mimar Sinan was the most suitable person to pick, probably. And as we see in this newspaper article, the great Turkish architect Sinan's tomb was opened and his skull was removed. And after the investigation, it is understood that he is brachycephalic, a type of the skull which is commonly seen in the Middle Asian people, so the Turks. So it is understood that he is Turk, not only in race but only in culture. But of course, this was a very unnecessary attempt, because we know that he comes from Anatolia, Kayseri, which was either Armenian. He was either Armenian or Greek, but no way, it's not possible to become a devshirme if he is a Muslim or if he is a Turk. That's very obvious. And eventually his skull has disappeared. So it also shows that the result of this investigation is a problematic one. But in any sense, he had become a national hero, and he still is. Many people are proud of him, but not because of his buildings, but because taking him as a Turk rather than an Ottoman. To me, it's a very important point that we are not 100% sure whether he is an Armenian or a Greek, because it was not questioned at his time. He was Ottoman basically, and he was serving to the Sultan. Well, now we are going into the second part of the lecture, and I will first talk about the innovations in his architecture. You see 3 plans of his buildings, but they are not in scale, because the plan on the right is the plan of Selimiye, and this is in fact much larger, but I intentionally put them like this in order to show you the development of the double boundary system that is in fact the source of his innovations, which are connected to each other. The dome here, the central dome here, is surrounded by 4 semidomes, as you will remember from last week. And the core is supported by the other auxiliary parts surrounding it. So I call this the first boundary, and the others, including the walls, the buttresses, and the arches, the second boundary. So if I put these lines, we see that the second boundary becomes closer and closer to the first boundary. And this enables the building to be more solid, more strong. And this also gives him the opportunity to make the interior space of a mosque, for instance, larger, which is in fact very much preferred for the prayer to be performed inside. And we especially see this in his masterpiece. He calls it, this is my masterpiece, Selimiye Mosque in Edirne. In this section, axonometric section, the first boundary is the baldachin kept by the dome and carried on the pillars. But it is supported closely by the second boundary, which is placed just close to it. And this makes an invisible support system, which is closely knit to the first boundary. And the structural elements like arches and buttresses surround it. We can also see those arches and buttresses. Those are the arches and those are the buttresses surround it, but they are of course not visible from the first boundary, inside the first boundary. So as a result, the interior space become an uninterrupted space. But don't mind this muezzin's platform here. This is another interesting addition of Sinan to this masterpiece. So the side corridors or side aisles becomes even smaller in order to let the central space, in order to make central space larger. And we can also treat these side galleries as another support system to the central to the primary boundary, because If you look from the very top, this is the semi-dome supporting the main dome, and the load coming from the dome is distributed first to semi-domes, then the exedras, then these side walls, and finally to these galleries. And it makes a very gradual, step-by-step flow, like a waterfall. And this supports the final support system. I can call this a support system. In fact, the side galleries becomes the feature that is introduced by Architect Sinan for the first time to the Ottoman architecture, because the previous mosques like Sultan Selim or Beyazıt or the first Fatih mosque doesn't use this. But it also becomes an artistic refinement, because in fact in Sinan's works structural form is always connected to the aesthetic idea, and each effort to strengthen the structure becomes a feature of the form. Here in Süleymaniye, the galleries, the side galleries, were appearing in two rows and as dynamic elements that embellish the facade. If we remove these galleries, like the one in Beyazıt Mosque or the Fatih Mosque, if we remove them, we will see a very plain side surface, and we will also have a weaker structure. But he not only takes those arch buttress system, as we see here, a very step-by-step, a gradual one, but unlike the bulky buttresses of Hagia Sophia or other buildings, he also, by attaching those galleries, he gives a vivid form to the lateral facades. But he also, again, here introduced the functional innovation which are seen on those ablution fountains. Of course, this is a very simple idea, but it was not implemented before, and ablution was usually performed in the courtyard. But in this example, the fountains were removed and attached to the next to the galleries. We once again see his masterpiece from a distance, Selimiye Mosque in Edirne, from a distance, and we now can admire his perfection of this double boundary system as he used those arches, buttresses, and the arches inside to support the main structure inside. And this gives him the chance to remove the role of the carrier role of the walls, and he can easily tear those walls to open more windows to let more light to the interiors. In fact, those lofty lateral facades counterbalance the horizontal tiers by vertical continuities. Those horizontal layers are balanced by the vertical lines. And he also, interestingly, make use of these weight threads, 8 of them, but in fact they are the continuation of the pillars inside the mosque, but they are not structural elements. They are hollow. The interiors of them are empty. They are just inserted there in order to embellish the structure. And as we see clearly here, the facade articulation surpasses that of Şehzade Mosque that he built for the deceased here apparent. And the facades also becomes a facade of a palace, although it's not a palace, it's a mosque, because as he inserts many windows, he also embellishes them with this white and red sandstone, and he also inserts those series of windows with screens and pointed arches, and he also makes use of the alternating sizes of the arches. So he, by creating a structural innovation inside, he frees himself to have more aesthetic experiments. And as a result, as I said, the interior becomes much more illuminated and without any column which would otherwise interrupt the prayer. And when you go inside the building, you immediately find yourself under the main dome, and the dome really dominates the space. Another unmatched facade composition could be found in Edirne Kapı Mihrimah Sultan, and it could be treated as the peak of his creation of plasticity within 3 dimensions. But I will briefly pay attention to the interior system, which has become a light thanks to many windows that he opened on the walls, because now those walls are not meant to support the building; they are just left for light, and those arches and those 4 pillars are carrying the load. And you usually need to use a tripod and taking pictures of the mosques in many places, but you don't need to use a tripod to take a picture of Mihrimah Sultan, because it's really a light during the day. In connection with his innovations again, I will take the pyramidal view of Süleymaniye. Again, it's as he makes use of those side semidomes and exedras, and step by step going down buttresses in a harmony. They reflect the curvature of the hill and dale of the given topography. And he also cleverly places the 4 minarets, the taller ones closer to the main structure, and the shorter ones at the far end of the courtyard. And he also places the tomb of Süleyman Hürrem, and the dome of bathhouse also contributes to the skyline or the pyramidal view. And in the skyline, they make a triangular effect, which looks as if an organic part of the topography. So it turns into maybe one of the much balanced designs, which suits very well to the given topography, to the given structure of the city. And if we compare this skyline or the silhouette with a predecessor and a successor building, well, the bulky structure of Hagia Sophia, which is kept with a semisphere on top of a rectangular structure, is in fact looks a little, in fact, looks much more primitive than this triangular or pyramidal view of Süleymaniye. And on the other side, this silhouette of Sultanahmet Mosque, in fact, also makes use of the same structural solution of Architect Sinan himself, because it was making use of Şehzade Mosque's outline, as you remember from last week, and it was built by one of the assistants or students of Architect Sinan, and he in fact repeats what Sinan did some 50 years ago. So, well, it's a really subjective issue, but we can make, when we make this comparison, one can say that the transition of the elements of the building is much more smoother than the Hagia Sophia.